Sorry, I was excited to see you press my keys. Oh, this looks like a little bit of a delay, huh? Wait, Krishna, you have a password to your Twitter? Hey, you have a password to your
Follow, where is it?
Oh look, I can see myself.
It's not the sound, it's just like the
yeah. Everyone, we're getting started with seats.
Heyo. I actually hate him. Yeah. Poisoned. Fowler, is this your
All right, everyone. Just like to welcome you all all to the second annual Wheel Debates. It's really great to have you here. So before we begin, I just want to lay out, how this is going to go out and there's a couple things to thank. So first, I'd like to thank the endorsement committee who met with all the candidates and discuss their platforms, and we'll be releasing endorsements shortly. I'd also like to thank special shout out to us from me for putting together an amazing looking website. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it yet, but emerywheel.com. If you look on the left side, you can hit the candidates page. Looks really good. It's a great way to get the community involved with the election process. We'd also like to thank the outgoing executive board, specifically Priyanka, for doing a great job the last year. Come full circle, we're now the next debate and ready for a new year. So this is how the debate will run. The format will go. We'll start with college council vice president, then we'll go to president, and then we'll move on to SGA vice president and then SGA president. During the debate and during their discussions, you can tweet questions to the candidates using the hashtag #RealDebates. We'll be checking that over there, and then during the last question session, we'll be just fielding your questions based on what you tweet, and you'll be able to ask the candidates directly. So this is the format of the debate. The presidential candidate debates and the VP candidate debates are different, as the presidential candidate debates have 2 candidates, while the VP debates only have 1. So for the presidential debates, candidates will briefly introduce themselves for about 30 seconds. They will then be asked a general question, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, and will then have an additional 2 minutes to rebut the other. So they'll go 1, 2, 1, 2. Then each candidate will be asked another individual specific question based on their candidate statement and interview. They'll then have 2 minutes to respond to that. They'll then be asked another general question, and she'll have 2 minutes to rebut each other's answers. And then we'll take any questions from the audience via Twitter, and there'll be concluding statements. For VP candidates, it's similar. Candidate will briefly introduce themselves for 30 seconds. They'll be asked then 2 questions, 2 minutes each, 1 general and 1 specific. Then they will have a closing statement, which will only be about 1 minute. Just a reminder, polls open Friday, February 27th at 8 p.m. and close Monday, March 2nd at 8 p.m. So I'll remind everyone that to go out and vote. So let me go introduce the first candidates. So we'd like to introduce our first candidate, Shannon Desai, for College Council VP.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon Desai, and I'm running to be your College Council Vice President. I've been on College Council for the past 3 years. The first year I was a freshman legislator, and then I moved up to the Assistant VP of Student Affairs, and this past year I was the VP of Student Affairs. During my time on Council, I've accomplished a lot. I initiated the establishment of the very first Culture Shock event for College Council, which is basically a huge celebration of the identities on our campus, and it kind of was used to bridge collaboration between organizations on campus that might not necessarily collaborate. And as Vice President, I want to do more of that, as well as gear the council towards smaller scale initiatives that can have a truly lasting impact on our community.
Great. Just so we know, for timing purposes, 1 hit, 2 hits is to wrap it up, and then 3 hits is stop. So I'll be timing it over here. So Sheena, your first question, 2 minutes to respond. What is the biggest issue College Council faces in the coming year?
I think that College Council in general has a lot of responsibility. We oversee the budgeting for all the clubs that we charter, so that's over 100 clubs. And not only that, we also kind of work to accomplish various initiative projects on campus. We're constantly doing internal reforms to our constitution. And so a lot of times it's hard to kind of keep everyone engaged and to allot time to things that are important. So, some meetings will be spent really working on internal reforms, and legislators kind of lose sight of the importance on working on their own personal initiative projects. And so that's something that I really want to work on fixing in the upcoming year. I want to make sure that during our general body meetings, we also have time for legislators to communicate with each other and to work with each other rather than kind of get caught up in just working on our budgeting, which is all important. But I think the biggest challenge has really been focusing on those smaller projects. And so that's something that I really hope to improve next year.
Right, great. Your next question, Gina. You said in your interview that you would like to restructure college council general body meetings and set aside time for legislators to brainstorm the ideas. Why do you think restructuring is necessary, and how would you run the brainstorming portion of the meetings?
So again, going off of my last response, I said that a big challenge was getting legislators, keeping them motivated to work on their initiative projects. So I think that in terms of restructuring, we have a lot of time for open forum during our meetings. And every meeting, the topic discussed during open forum is different. But in the upcoming year, I would like to potentially establish a brief 10 to 15-minute period where legislators can stay and talk to other legislators about their initiatives and work with each other. And so it would be a minor restructuring because as it is, I do think that our meetings run quite smoothly. I just think that that extra time allotted for brainstorming is very important.
All right, great. So, Richard, any questions for you? Okay, no audience questions. So now move on to the closing statement. So 1 minute.
Again, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve the Emory community for the past 3 years as a member of College Council. I can think of nothing that has defined my Emory experience more than being part of this amazing organization. It's the main thing that I do on campus and hope to continue doing for my last year here. I want to serve as board liaison between just the student body and the administrative offices on campus. I know that sometimes there's a communication gap, and sometimes the student body asks for things or addresses concerns that can't quite be fulfilled. And so I just want to make it a point that that's going to be my primary goal for next year, to keep you guys well connected with the administration. And in general, just thanks for coming. I appreciate your support and appreciate your vote on election day.
Thank you, Sheena. Now I'd like to invite Alyssa Weinstein and Wilton come up and hold their portion of the day. Okay, so we'll start with the general question. We're going to start with Alyssa. Flip the coin, let's make sure we go first. So starting with Alyssa, what are your biggest concerns about Emory or student body, and how do you plan on addressing these concerns?
So I think some of the biggest concerns that I have about Emory and the issues that we face generally surround apathy. So a lot of organizations and groups of people, they really focus on, what are concerns them, what concerns their cultural group, their religious group, however they define themselves. But unfortunately, it sometimes means that they don't often go outside the bounds of those organizations and those groups. So I think that it's really important to encourage learning where you're kind of outside your comfort zone. I think that's the point of being in a university such as Emory that has a diverse population where you're able to learn from others and kind of get out of your comfort zone.
Okay, great. And Wilton, your response? You'll respond to the question, and then you will then reply to the response. She'll reply to your response, and you will have time.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So one of the major issues that I find at Emory is this lack of community and diversity. So talking to students during this past month and during my time at Emory, I find that a lot of students have this idea that Emory isn't diverse, when in fact we're one of the most diverse campuses in the nation. And I think what this has to do with is the fact that oftentimes we get super involved in our organization, and there's not a lot of incentives at Emory University to collaborate with other clubs. So something that I want to do to address this is to make sure that College Council as a budgeting committee is offering incentives to these clubs, whether that means money-wise, whether that means support-wise, to collaborate, especially because a lot of these organizations are quite similar in their motives. Just because you're identified with a certain ethnicity, like if you're like ICE, doesn't mean that you can't collaborate with other organizations, because you both have like the same motives at the end of the day, which is to get yourself known at Emory and to collaborate with other groups. And so in addition to this, another thing that I'm doing to address this, or that I would do, is to bring in the Vice President of Community and Diversity, which would work not just to collaborate with these clubs, but to create spaces where they can do so. And we will also offer incentives for this. So this would be through the Asbury House and then the BSA House. And reforming these have been houses that have been vacated for several years now, and are kind of falling apart. And so I want to make sure that we're using these in the best of our ability, because our tuition is going to keeping these houses around. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Melissa, you have a 2 minutes rebuttal.
So I really appreciate you bringing up a lot of those concerns. And those are actually a lot of concerns that I had when I was running for vice president. And so as a result, we've actually put a lot of these changes in place that you've mentioned. So we've already put in place this year monetary incentives in our budget that gives financial incentives for organizations to collaborate with each other so that they will receive a higher percentage of funding when they're bringing in a bill that is co-sponsored with another organization. I've also, when I was a vice president and continuing this year, I started something called the Emory's President's Forum, where we invite the presidents of all organizations that are chartered under College Council to an event where they're able to meet each other. And this is not only a recognition of their leadership, but also serves to directly incentivize them to collaborate. So while I completely agree with you, I also identify as a problem is getting groups to collaborate and get out of their own groups, but we've also done a lot of work together as well. And in terms of the Asbury House, I know that it is in talks to be actually repurposed for something else, which is going to be a living space for religious students. And I actually see that use as more beneficial than another partying space, which we already have significant numbers of available spaces where students can have registered parties. And I see events that we had this year with like TEDx and ATO, or organizations that are non-Greek are partnering with Greek organizations to use these spaces as a much better form of collaboration.
Okay, great. Now, Goldie, you can respond to those comments.
Thank you. And just in reference to the Asbury House thing, I'm not sure if that's actually true, because they have a meeting with Dean Meyer about that earlier this week. But it's possible that there's been conversations for several things. That's just one initiative that I've been working on personally with Dean Meyer on. And then in addition to what you're saying about apathy, I think that's a wonderful idea. I think that, yes, it's true. A lot of the students are a bit apathetic towards collaborating with other organizations possibly, but I think that students are extremely passionate about the clubs that they're involved in. So I don't know if I would necessarily say that they're apathetic.
Okay, great. We'll now move on to the next question, which is for Alyssa. 2 minutes to respond. Alyssa, in your candidate statement, you don't mention College Council's budget. Given that College Council is a budgeting organization, what role do you see yourself playing in this process?
So yeah, I think a big reason why I didn't mention the budget is not to say that we don't need to improve our budget, but that this year was actually very successful for us in terms of budgeting. So the year when I was a sophomore legislator, we actually came very close to becoming in a state of financial emergency. So we were very, very cautious while I was vice president to make sure that we could never come close to having that again. So we made sure to put in place different checks to ensure our financial transparency. When I was a legislator, there was no way of knowing necessarily every week how much money we had left. Whereas this, I made sure as vice president that our vice president of finance announces during his minutes how much money that we have in our accounts. So every single member of College Council is aware of the accounts, the status of our accounts, and how our financial system works. Of course, there's always room for improvement. So I see myself as working very closely with the Vice President of Finance and our budget chair to collect this feedback and implement it into always evolving our financial system. But as of this year, we did a great job, and I'd like to continue that.
Okay, great. The next question is for Goldie. Goldie, you were abroad last semester and thus not involved in College Council. How do you make up for this lost time on both a personal and professional level?
Well, I think first on a personal level, studying abroad is a very formative experience. So I think just in itself, it has helped me become a better leader, a better person, a more well-rounded individual. And it allowed me to come back to Emory's campus with a new perspective and a fresh perspective. And I think having both had the experience of being on and off College Council offers a unique place for me. And I feel like as a student who's looking from the outside currently, I do think that there's still a lot of room for improvement on College Council, specifically on budgeting. I think it's imperative to focus on budgeting, and then also on constitutional reform and make sure that we're holding legislators accountable. I think when I was on the council, I believe that things were going a lot better than they were when I began to look from the outsider's perspective.
Okay. So the next question is a general question that will be ready for all of you. This time, Goldie will answer first. So Goldie, in what areas could College Council improve? And how do you improve these areas?
I think there's two areas that I'm mainly focusing on that need to be improved. The first one's constitutional reform, and then the second one is actually budgeting reform. I think that, yes, we've made a great improvement, but I think considering that College Council is a budgeting committee, it is imperative to be focusing on budgeting and to be focusing on making changes in that. I think something that I want to bring in is to make sure that we're holding the clubs accountable in a better way, which we have been doing by this past semester introduced an audit committee that works to tax clubs' money, but it's still a little bit in the works because it was just introduced. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see in this coming year that just as we're transparent with clubs can be transparent with us. In addition to this, I want to make sure that we're exercising the budget on a monthly basis and not just as a semester basis, which we have also begun to do, but it seems like at this past semester, we spent an exponential more amount of money during the beginning of the semester, which is pretty normal because most clubs do have most of their events at the beginning. September is like a big month for College Council club events, but it's still important that we're tracking the money, just as Melissa said, not only by saying how much money we have left in our budget, but also by exercising like a stricter budget. And then in addition to that, for the constitutional reform, I want to make sure that we're holding legislators accountable and making sure that we're holding legislators accountable for long-term initiatives. Often legislators get really caught up in these short-term initiatives, and there's not really a way to transfer the short-term ones or the long-term ones to the next legislator. So legislator role seems to be a very one-year position. Most people who are legislators switch to executive board the following year, or they don't come back to the council. So for instance, I was talking to one legislator who's been working on this wonderful initiative for the bubble, but she's not planning on coming back to the council next year. And I think it's imperative to make sure that she is printing out all of her emails, printing out all the work that's been done towards that initiative, and making sure that there's a better transitioning period for the person who will be taking her position in the coming year, and making sure that that person is constitutionally accountable to this initiative. Thank you.
You can wrap up. You can wrap up.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Same question for Roseanne.
It's not a rebuttal answering the question.
Yeah, so you both can answer the question to start, and then you'll reply to it.
So areas of improvement for College Council. So I would actually agree with a lot of what Goldie is saying to some degree, whereas we made improvements in a lot of these areas, and I'd like to continue to do so. But I actually think that what we need to focus on is first and foremost transparency, and not just transparency with College Council, but also acting as an intermediary to improve transparency between the administration and the general student body. So talking first about transparency for College Council, something that I wanted to do this year, which has not yet happened, is to improve our website. It's extremely outdated, and considering how many students I know from personal experience, when I was trying to act as a treasurer for a different organization, trying to find out information about applying for a budget and things like that can be quite complicated when the not most updated information is available. So improving the website would be number one for me. But number two, I also think that College Council, since, as the vice president, I've gotten to have a lot of interaction with different levels of the administration, whereas students don't necessarily approach these positions as much, and there shouldn't be as much of an information gap as there is. So for example, when we constituted our first campus-wide survey this year, we had a lot of suggestions from students about which kinds of initiatives that they want to see on campus, which was really, really important feedback for us to see. And then as we approached administrators with this feedback, a lot of it were things that we could do and that we're actually in the works of doing, but also some of these things are just not feasible for reasons that I wouldn't have even known. So also bridging that gap, I'd like to have town hall forums where we can help bridge that gap and I think improve transparency as a whole.
Okay, great. So, Rusha, we're now going to move on to audience questions. So do we have anything on Twitter? If it's very difficult, you each have a minute to respond to your question.
Okay, this is like a hybrid mind question. You guys kind of both touched on the issues with the council, and both brought up creating an auditing committee, but that seems like that's addressing budgetary issues after money is already been given to clubs. So my question is, how are you going to encourage clubs, and specifically the leadership for those clubs to spend money more responsibly?
So the way the audit committee, so actually it's already been set up, it was very recently in place. And so,
Took place at the beginning of last year.
yeah, so very recently in place. And so it's still in the works, but basically the way it works is essentially it makes sure that we're tracking the money. So right now we don't, or since the beginning of the semester, before the beginning of the past semester, we didn't track our money. So oftentimes a club would receive X amount of money, and then, like for instance, a fundraising club, if we give money for a fundraising, then they then have to give us back that money in addition to what they, or take what they made and then give it back what we gave them, if that makes sense. That was a little bit confusing, sorry. And so now we're making sure that we're tracking the money that gets left in their own account, and then making sure that when things are purchased, we know what was purchased, if it was a thing, if what was purchased, what they wrote that they were going to purchase was purchased. So that's what the audit committee focuses on, making sure that we're tracking where the money is going, because before this year, a lot of money was getting lost, and because we're a council that is a little bit tight on money at times, to carry that.
Just to clarify, I think it's a little confusing to say that the College Council doesn't track its money and that we lose money in that way. College Council knows where we're putting our money and exactly where it's going and how much we have. The issue is where clubs will come in and we'll give them 84% of what they're asking for. So if they inflate what they're asking for and then don't use their own money to compensate for the rest of the 16%, if they're not compensating for the rest of that gap on their own, that's where the audit committee is going to come in and make sure that they're doing honest practices. But so basically, I think the best way to encourage responsible spending is basically comes from our monetary policy. So right now, I know a large percentage of our funding, like your student activity fee, really just goes to like food at events. And so a big thing that we've been thinking about is how good is an event if you have to have food there to get students there? So that's why last year, when we spent way over what we're supposed to do, and this year, where we're well within our means, is we're reducing the amount of money that we have for non-essential food at events. So therefore, clubs are required to spend more responsibly.
Okay, do we have any more questions from Twitter?
Not very good. Yes, please keep questions.
Okay, so then we'll now move on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to deliver a closing statement, and we'll start with Melissa.
So since I've been on College Council in the middle of my freshman year, it has absolutely been the greatest experience that I've had at Emory. And I don't think that it should only be an amazing experience for those who serve on council, but also for the Emory community as a whole. So we should act just as, you know, a governing body that you come to when you need something, but we should also be a resource for you and provide things for you to support you throughout your experience. So I think that it's really important in College Council's role to support education outside of the classroom through several different initiatives that I've proposed within my platform. I think it's really important that we encourage people to collaborate with different organizations, which I've done as vice president and we continue to do as president. And I also think that it's really important to, you know, be actively involved on campus. And so through our events that we have with Culture Shock and State of Grace and Social Justice Week, we provide numerous opportunities for that. And we're going to continue to build on the success that we've had in the last 2 years to make next year even better for you. So I think it's really important for you to vote. I can't even stress that enough. Whether you're voting for me or not, it's really important to have your voice heard. So don't forget to vote on Friday to Tuesday.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see what happens in this coming year. Ever since I got to Emory, there's also just, in addition to what Alyssa said, she's totally right. There has been some amazing changes in place, but there's still so much more that can be done. And what I really want to focus on is not just what we can do in the coming year, but what we can do for the next 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years down the line when I come back to Emory as an alumni, and we continue to see growth in clubs, organizations, and collaboration, diversity, and inclusion, and creating a safe space at Emory in its entirety. So I'm really excited. I hope you guys do all vote. Voting rates at Emory are relatively low, so it'll be exciting to see those increase. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Goldie. Can you round of applause for the candidates? Now, SGA Vice Presidential Candidate Max Zimmerman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Max Zimmerman. I'm a sophomore in college, and I'm running to be the next Executive Vice President of the Student Government Association. This past year, I served as a sophomore representative, as well as the chairman of the Campus Services Committee and the chairman of the Campus Safety and Crisis Prevention Task Force. This past year, I addressed issues ranging from food options and dessert options in the DUP to campus to airport holiday shuttles to a top-to-bottom reevaluation of our campus safety infrastructure and responsiveness to issues of sexual assault. If elected, I would like to serve a commitment to more open lines of communication between the student government and the student body, pursuing more campus safety through actualizing the Guardian Initiative, building more inclusive campus, and addressing issues that students care about, like printing and extended reading period, for example.
All right, Max. So your first question, for you to respond, what are some major policy initiatives that you would implement as SGA Vice President?
Sure. So I'll start at the very top with communication. I would like to see the student government regularly publish detailed explanations of every piece of legislation that's up for vote in a public manner, accompanied by a weekly breakdown, an itemized breakdown of our expenditures, so the student body is as involved and as aware as possible about what the student government is doing for them. I would also like to form a third-party polling body made up of students who are unaffiliated with the student government to better inform student government legislators about what the student body actually wants. Last year, President Darby was on the stage and said that too often the student government works in a decide first, engage later fashion. I think that we've taken great strides to fix that, but I think there's more that we can do. I would like to finish the Guardian Initiative, institute more lighting, more surveillance in parking structures to make sure we don't have to get instant reports like the ones that we've gotten all year long. And I would like to work to institutionalize a series of awareness weeks for minority and interest groups on campus. So to build a more inclusive campus and to make sure that those groups understand that their student government and that their administration is working with them and is working for them. And then finally, I would like to pursue the two initiatives that I mentioned in my opening statement, and that is subsidized or at least front-loaded printing and an extended reading period before both winter and spring final exams.
All right, thank you. So here's your specific question. So Max, in your candidate statement, you push for more inclusion in the younger community. What events or initiatives would you start to facilitate this goal?
Sure, so the three that are specifically delineated in our platform are first a joint Oxford Atlanta campus freshman orientation to make sure that at the very outset, first-year students do not feel dissociated from the Atlanta campus or dissociated from Oxford campus and vice versa. And then throughout their experience at Emory, I'd like to program more joint Atlanta-Oxford events. I think that too often there's a perception that Atlanta campus and Oxford campus are two individual spheres, when in reality we are one Emory. Second, I would like to, as I said, address the issue of institutionalizing awareness weeks. I think that too often it's left to individual organizations, minority groups, interest groups to program their own events, to raise awareness on their own, organize their speaker series on their own. I think that it's important for those groups to understand that their student government both endorses their activities and supports them at an infrastructural, institutional, and monetary level. So I'd like to do that as well.
Thank you, Max. We'll now move on to audience questions that we have in Twitter. Okay.
So your current position on the legislature is a voting position, but vice president is a non-voting position. And I've seen your name as the author of a lot of bills this year. So I guess I'm wondering how to transition from a voting member to a member that's most supposed to be more of a facilitator, and what you see the vice president role is. How will you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've immensely enjoyed my time in the legislature. I derive really genuine satisfaction from being able to participate in the debate about whether or not to pass legislation, not just what legislation to discuss. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to play a vocal role in getting a lot done this year. That being said, I think the difference between the position of executive vice president and the position of legislator is the difference between deciding what to implement and deciding what to discuss for implementation. It's about designing and directing a legislative agenda, and I think that's equally as important as participating in the passive process. So I'm excited to be part to potentially be part of the executive branch, because I'm excited to be part of the production of some unified, directed legislative agenda for the year. So the student government has organization, has direction. The student body doesn't feel like, you know, we just come up with these ideas willy-nilly and then put them before the student body without making them first. I'd like the student body to know that we have a plan. And that we intend on executing that plan, and then I'd like to participate in helping direct the legislature to work in stepwise manner through that plan to build confidence among the student body in the student government.
Any more questions from the audience?
Yes. How logistically feasible is a joint college-Oxford orientation? So I guess that's being
Anything is logistically feasible. It's about the amount of time and the amount of work and the amount of resources that you're willing to put into it. I think that the Student Government Association is uniquely staffed by students who are willing to put in that time, who are willing to find those resources, and who are willing to be dedicated to initiatives to make sure that it's feasible. It would be about coordinating transportation, something that I have a lot of experience with as a result of my time in the legislature this year, planning the holiday shuttles. It would be about finding a common space, which would be about identifying either some meeting space in the middle, a conference center or something like, or hosting multiple events in the common areas of both campuses. Hosting events at either the Sac or McDonough, hosting events at the Woodpeck or down Rockford campus on the Quad. This would be about identifying the space and identifying transportation, but after that, everything sort of falls into place. So I think it's really just about, you know, being confident in our ability to find the resources. I don't think that's a problem, or at least it has not been in the past.
All right, any more questions from the audience? Okay, we'll move on to closing statements. Actually, moment.
I think this year the student government has had a good year. And by that I mean that the student government has been more active, more enthusiastic, and more engaged in the process of effectively legislating than I think it ever has in the past. That being said, I think that there is room to grow. There are areas for improvement. I think that there are commitments to the student body that have not been fully realized yet. I think that we still have a responsibility that we worked toward but not fully fulfilled to communicate with and engage the student body, to make the student body feel that they are part of their student government and not against their student government. And I think that I'm most excited to participate in that process of opening up the lines of communication and making the student government more accountable to the student body. I think that we can do more on the issue of campus safety. I think that the issue of reforming our shuttle services and shuttle systems is not done yet, not by a long shot. I think that we can do more to bring this campus together as one Emory University, and I think that we can do more to address specific issues that students care about. And I'm excited to participate in the process of doing that.
Okay, let's have a round of applause for that. And we'll call up SJ presidential candidates, Raj Silva, on this week. So Raj, please, this first question will be a general question directed at both of you. We each have 2 minutes to answer it, and then 2 minutes to rebut your opponents on this. So, what is or should be SGA's role in the Emory community? We'll start with Raj.
Awesome. When I sit here, as I sat here last year as well, I always think of my platform as being a philosophy, as a modus operandi that's going to be, that's going to set the tone for the coming year. And I think SGA's role is supposed to be the one that facilitates student initiatives, facilitates things that student organizations want to do, facilitates what the student body wants to get done, and providing resources for them to realize what the student body wants to do. So I think that's definitely one big role that student government should be undertaking. And the second role that I think we have done a great job this past year is student advocacy and making sure that we are providing resources, we are engaging in conversations, and we are engaging the student body who is not involved in the student government directly in these conversations with us. So I think these two things are definitely imperative for a student government to tackle head on, and I think that's where I see SGA serving its rightful role in the community.
Please.
Sure. So I think that SG's role at Emory is twofold. One, we have to represent students, and two, to lead for our students. So first, in terms of representation, I feel like we, as representatives that are elected or appointed, that we have to represent what our students want, what issues are plaguing our student body, and what we can do to help them and enhance their Emory experience. And two, I think as leaders that we're elected, I think that we need to make initiatives and create ideas that will further our interests that perhaps our students don't know, don't have access to yet. So through those two avenues, leading and representing, I think that's what SGA needs to do and has a lot of potential to do in the following years.
All right, great. So Raj, you have 2 minutes to respond to Lisa's comments.
Awesome. I really do agree with Elise in her vision for student government as well, and I think it definitely it complements my vision as well and my expectation for SGA's role in the community. And I really do think that that communication part is really important. I think SGA has taken a lot of strides in order to have the resources for better communications with the student body, better engagement with the student population. I think what needs to, the next thing that SGA needs to do is educating people about these resources, educating people about ways in which they can be involved. We have a wonderful student government website, courtesy of John Darby, but I think actualizing the potential of that is going to be something that's going to be really important, and I think I definitely do agree with a lot that you have to say.
Lisa, you have 2 minutes to respond to Raj's comment.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I agree with what you stated as well. I need to say though, if you ask the average student here at Emory, what does SGA do? A lot of people will say, well, what is SGA? What does it stand for? I don't know what we've done this year. And that to me is really frustrating. That's why I'm running. I really feel like we need a leadership change because I don't think this past year students have felt the immediate impact of what SGA has been doing. And 1 year from now, if I am elected, I really want students to say, well, they've been able to advocate this and this and this for me. And I really felt like SGA represented me and my interests.
Okay. The next question is for Raj. You have 2 minutes to respond. Raj, during your interview, you said you were unable to accomplish some of your goals last year due to unforeseen circumstances. How would you ensure you accomplish your goals while also completing the day-to-day tasks of SGA president?
Awesome. And as I said in my response to the first question, that my platform serves as a philosophy and the way that I'm going to handle situations, the initiatives that are going to be undertaken are going to be aligning with the philosophy. And I think one of the parts of that is how do you tackle unforeseen circumstances? And I think that's something that once you take position, once you take office, you really realize that when something comes on, you get derailed, your plans need to be pushed back. And I think one thing that I definitely foresee foresee my board doing a really good job with is that we have 5 appointed positions that we can appoint as the SGA president can appoint 4 positions and the vice president can appoint 1 position as well. And making sure that we have some room in our appointed positions. I think John and we had a really ambitious plan for this year, and that's why we had all our appointed positions occupied, and that's why we could not tackle a lot of things that we wanted to get done when we started our term. So I think being more proactive in that way and making sure that we have some room of immediate implementation would go a really long way. And I think that's one of the reasons that's one of the things that we tried to do, that we realized that we were too ambitious, and that's why we had the biggest application that we've ever done. We received 200 applications to serve on our 5 task forces and various appointed positions that we had created. So I think implementing these things more and making sure that we still stick to our principles and our philosophy of the student government and how we serve the community better will go a long way. I'm really excited for that.
Elise, this question is for you. You don't have as much executive experience on SGA as your opponent. What do you bring to the table that makes you a better candidate?
Sure. Well, I do have to argue that a little bit. I do serve on the executive board of Oxford Student Government Association myself here. But in terms of what I bring to the table, one, I am from Oxford, so I understand how it feels to be part of a division that's smaller than college. And I think that as SGA president, you have to represent the entire university and all of its divisions and councils. I do think sometimes when we make decisions at SGA, they're very broad and very impactful for our entire university. And I think sometimes we neglect to include those characteristics or know how we're going to impact the societies. Also, I believe that I have the ideas and the vision of what SGA does, and I really care about our community and what SGA is capable of doing, and I think that can bring that to the table also.
Okay, we have a general question, same format as before. What do you believe is the biggest issue facing SGA in the coming year, and what would you do to address it? This time we'll start with Elise.
Sure. So I think something that's facing us, we have is also internal issues that we have in SGA. I think that we need to have more of an accountability structure in place. If you come to some of our meetings this year, a lot of times we are wasting 20 or 30 minutes trying to find proxies because people just don't show up. And I really think that's unacceptable. If we are electing as representatives to represent our interests and what our needs in our campus, and they're not even coming to our meetings to show up, and we have to find random people to fill in, I don't think that we can expect our student government to address our needs and do what they need to do. So in the upcoming year, if you elect me, I want to do a lot of reform in our existing governing structure to make sure that we're more accountable. Perhaps we should write an amendment or a bill that will require our representatives to come to our meetings and have an excuse and make sure they have a proxy to fill in for them, so we don't waste valuable time just looking for people or not being accurately represented.
Awesome. I think one of the things that we were really excited about that we did this past year was, which was led by our task force on student organization management and collaboration technologies, was to find a software solution that solves a lot of the problems that we have for student organization management. At the moment, we have multiple different platforms like the Emory Bubble, Community, and it is just too confusing for students to actually realize what they're supposed to be using for what purpose. And at the same time, there are so many loopholes in, and so many things that need to be addressed that are not addressed by either of these softwares. So that's what we tried to do this year, and the RFP was sent out, and we heard back from all the vendors that we reached out to. So I think the next big thing that we're going to face in the coming year is sort of implementing the software, and how do we get all the student organizations on board, all divisions, educating them, making